too, and things like that. So all
Cool.
good. Yay! Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing, live show number 208, being brought to you today by Crispy Nuts. No, I'm just with Mr. Tim Peter, with Tim Peter and Associates. I was just talking with Tim. We have a lot of our co-hosts out and about. Stuart is Mr. Griswold with Wally World. He's out with the family on a family vacation. Robert decided to be Forrest Gump. He was literally in every picture that I could find about the Engage conference that Milestone was holding up in Northern California. He was in literally every picture in the background. He's just standing there. It's like he was superimposed into it. Let's see. Ed is also taking a family trip up to Niagara Falls. Something about a barrel trip, a barrel ride he wanted to try. And let's see. But Valen might join us. Valen might join us today. We haven't had Valen on the show for a long time, and I'm truly looking forward if she can make it today. I sent, I think, Ed's invitation over. So for that. We are currently simulcasting to APAC and EU on their channel live. Of course, the replays for them are on Mondays and Tuesdays correspondingly. And there's a whole mess of stuff. But Tim, thank you for making it over. I didn't know you were going to be some clandestine client engagement and saving the world, and all that. Kind of
No, not today. Today I'm here with you, and happy to be so. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to the discussion.
I have lots of fun things.
Stories.
Yeah, fun thing. Robert did come through. For those who are on the HSMAI marketing board, you received, of course, Robert's well-curated list of information. Given
Lauren that I knew it was just going to be the two of us, I went ahead and read most of them to make sure I actually knew what I was talking about for a change, instead of just having an opinion without any facts.
I have questions for you. I have stuff that I wanted to ask you. I was still looking for it. It is. Love all the co-hosts. Do not get me wrong. I love every opportunity I can have to talk with you. It is therapy for me every week to be able to talk to anybody that gets to join us. But there are magic moments where the chance to talk to each host in different ways. And with your insights and so forth, I thought some of the articles were particularly interesting, especially to hear your take and your perspective on some of them.
Likewise.
So I'm definitely looking forward to it. I am very excited about some of the stuff that Ed and Stuart are doing on their booking engine, and it's not a my story to tell.
Sure.
But some great stuff. I hope that by the end of August we get to talk about it.
Cool.
Some of the things they're doing are really very progressive and very interesting to see what happens based on what they're launching of them and stuff. But besides all that, what article hit your chord the most out of all of those ones?
Well, I figure there were two that I thought were particularly interesting, but I read through all of them. I thought there was a lot of good stuff here. We may as well start with the top story, the Gen Z discussion, which Robert linked to an article, actually two articles, both in Condé Nast Traveler, rather, excuse me. One about how Gen Z is pressuring the travel industry in all the right ways, and one about understanding how millennials engage with causes and social issues. And this is a topic that's somewhat near and dear to my heart. I am a parent to a millennial and a Gen Z and an old Gen Z. I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff to be taken away from these articles that I think we need to define some terms before we have a discussion about them.
Please.
So first, the thing that I always encourage people to realize is that when we talk about demographic cohorts, millennials, Gen Z, boomers, Gen X, whatever, people have to recognize that everybody within those groups is an individual, and they are at whatever life stage they're at and whatever their individual perspective is, their individual capabilities for travel are, right? But that it's really important to recognize we're using these as sort of proxies for groups of behaviors, some of which are going to be true and some of which are going to be less, meaningful, right? But to define some terms, first, when we talk about millennials, I actually have stopped referring to them as millennials. I prefer to call them adults under 40, right? Because the age of people who tend to fall into the millennial category, by the way, I always use Pew's research for their definition of these terms. The only official definition of any demographic cohort that exists anywhere is the United States Census Department is actually who defined what a baby boomer is. And baby boomers are baby boomers because there was a huge boost in births following World War II. So baby boomers were born between 1946 and 1964 that were then followed by the baby bust, which is sometimes known as Gen X, right? But only the Census Department only recognizes one group, and that is boomers. Pew, however, has done very good demographic research, and I tend to like it. So I use their data for pretty much all of this stuff. Influenced by other things I've read, but nonetheless, that's the data I tend to pull from. So when we talk about millennials, we're talking about people who are between the ages of about 23 to 24, at the 23 at the young end to about 37 or 38. So we're talking about adults under the age of 40. When we talk about millennials, we really mean people who are post-college for the most part, in the early days of their working career, to folks who've been working professionally for, 10 years or more. That's what millennials are. When we talk about Gen Z, we're talking about people who are 22 at the oldest, right? And given that these tend to run for about a 15 to 16 year span, 7 at the youngest. So when we talk about Gen Z, most of these folks are not travelers. Now, I want to. There's still, that doesn't mean that they're not important, by the way, and it doesn't mean that they're not important to the hospitality industry. However, there were a couple of other things that I wanted to point out. One, the Condé Nast Traveler article that talks about how Gen Z is pressuring the travel industry in all the right ways has an error in its statistics.
Ooh.
They cite a study that says Gen Z will be responsible for 40% of all consumer spending. However, if you click on the link, they link to the study. That's not what the study says. It says that Gen Z are going to be 40% of all consumers, which is not the same thing. Given that most of these folks don't work yet, most of them are high school students or college students or the like. They probably punch under their weight in terms of relative spend. They might be 40% of the population, right? But they're not, or whatever the number is, but they're certainly not 40% of all spending yet. The other thing that's interesting, and this is from Pew data, and we'll come back to this later, so I don't want to belabor this point, but a much smaller share of high school students and college students who are Gen Z, right, work than millennials did, or than Gen X did, or than boomers did. For a couple of reasons. One, they don't need to, right? Millennials, unfortunately, in relative terms to generations that preceded them, and apparently generations that follow them, were poorer than other generations at the same ages.
Yeah, remember that.
A lot of millennials had to work when they were high school age or college age. There were more high school dropouts among millennials than there were among Gen Z or Gen X. There were more people who went to work directly after high school from millennials than from Gen Z or Gen X, because they needed to, because they were making less money, because they were coming out of high school and things like that during the depths of the recession, right?
Right.
So because fewer Gen Z work than millennials did, they also probably have less money. So these folks are not travelers, right? Okay. All of that said, there was an amazing statistic that they overlooked. And anybody with kids will know this. Anybody with, young adult children will know this. The original study said that Gen Z influences about $4 billion in discretionary spending. Right? Now think about your next family vacation, right? Do your kids have any input into that whatsoever?
Oh gosh, no, they just have to do whatever the parents tell them. They have no influence whatsoever.
Right. So, we as hotel marketers and folks like that probably don't need to worry about Gen Z as being our guests. but we do need to worry about, what they influence in terms of what people want. And I do think that that's really the key takeaway. This article focused a lot on causes and social issues and climate change and things along those lines. And I think that's actually pretty important, because I think that's really the thing you should take away from the story. I have said for years that technology is hereditary. We get it from our kids, right? I only started texting when my kids started texting, because prior to that, I didn't need there was nobody I needed to text with, right? Sure. Okay, who do I text with today? Everybody. Right?
Right.
There's this mistaken belief amongst a lot of people that, the olds, defined as however you want to define them, influence kids, and the kids adopt the behaviors of the olds. And that is not the way it works. The reason marketers care about youth so often is because youth actually shape the culture, and everybody adopts the behaviors of the youth. Not every behavior, and some things are just fads that go away and the like. But the longer lasting behaviors tend to start at the younger audience and work their way up through the older audiences, right?
Yeah, very true.
So these values in terms of, climate change, and in terms of the environment, and in terms of sustainability, and all these other kinds of things that we've been talking about for a long time, that are so important to younger people, are going to become important to older people, because we adopt the behaviors and attitudes of our kids in many ways. And I don't think this is a fad that is going away.
No, I don't think so either.
So I think that's really the important part. It's not about we need to start marketing to Gen Z or things along those lines. It's that we need to start to understand that there's a value shift coming, and are we listening to our guests correctly to reflect the values that our guests are going to have over the longer term. And that's really the important part of the story to me.
Yeah, it's funny. You read the story, and I know I read the same story too, and you saw the numbers, and I didn't pay much attention to the numbers, certainly not the misquoting of the 40% by any stretch, nor looked at the numbers that we were referring to. I saw more of a perspective of travel shift to the Zs, to the millennials, or to those that are under 40. Their conscientiousness as to climate. I mean, not to get philosophical or anything like that, but their impact on their lives is going to be much more pronounced than the impact on our current lives.
Oh, sure.
And for them, as aware as they are, more so than we were at their age, in reverse, their early insights as to what's important to them is different. And of course, those that were under 40, their influence was more about the terrorisms and so forth, and because they lived through those things, it affected their lives in that way. So each generation, as we classify them, are impacted by the things that are in their mindset, what's going to influence their duration of life. And this whole not flying versus flying, or traveling enough, we have certain things now that are making news more relevant, where you can't travel to popular tourist destinations. They're over tourism. They're over. There's too much of it. The Venices, the Yosemites, the places that are no longer viable travel destinations, because if you're not booking way ahead of time, and even when you get there, the experience is almost as a mass group, not as a individual experience.
Yeah.
So these things, how are those? I thought about how crazy will it be in the future to shape these things, where limits are going to be placed on how many people can, as a tourist, travel to a destination in Venice or in Yosemite or in certain places, Bali and places, and where flights are being limited over countries because they don't want that traffic lift to come into their market. No matter how much the business is of value, then the prices simply just go up. To be one of those unique people to travel, you're going to be paying for that experience of opportunity. So the metrics that are at play for some of those things. That's why I was kind of reading into the article. I didn't really think that there was a conscious awareness that multiple thousands. All you have to do is look at in-flight and see the tens of thousands of planes in the air at any one time. Going, my gosh, why isn't that we're not living in shadows all the time because of all these planes? It's amazing. But that's what I saw in that conversation with it as well.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's absolutely right. I will tell you, I've given some thought to the over tourism problem, and I don't know what the answer is there. That's going to be a really interesting situation that I don't know what we do about. In all candor,
Yeah.
I suspect it's going to. I don't know. Here's my thing, right? I don't think we're going to get away from flying.
No.
I'm going off of FAA numbers because those are the easiest to pull, right? So I don't know global, but just in the U.S. alone, there were 44,000 flights handled every day by the FAA, right? There are some 3 million people fly every day,
Every day.
right? And usually they're all in line in front of me in group one. No,
Ain't that the truth?
I mean, I'm group one. I'm just like the lowest of group one, but it's crazy how much people depend on travel and tourism, and it's a huge component of our economy. It's an enormous percentage of our economy. I'm looking at FAA data. Just aviation broadly, contributed 5% of U.S. GDP last year. Right? Now, you want to have a recession? Just stop all flying.
Yeah.
Right?
Holy
You
geez,
take a 5-point hit right off the top. I mean, that would be really bad.
Yeah.
I don't know what the right solution is there. I will tell you opportunistically, I think if you're in a place that's, more of a secondary market or even, I don't want to say lower end or lower quality or anything along those lines, but maybe less popular primary destination. The fact that Venice is over, there's over tourism in parts of the world like Venice or like, Madrid or like Barcelona or things along those lines, like Paris, could be an opportunity for your market to promote.
Yes.
Hey, stick of the crowds, come see whatever cool is in our place, right?
I got an interesting split in the road here. I was going to drop in that article about the summer trends, how bipolar it seemed, based on our conversation about Z and millennials, and the bipolarity of some of these percentages of who takes vacation, not and doesn't take vacation, how they perceive vacation. We can go that direction now since it's connected to the Z conversation. Or I had something that was totally off the rails from what Robert had sent. I, as you know, being a tech geek, I'm enthralled with 360 video. It is just this amazing thing. I had a fundamental paradigm shift in my perspective of this recently. I always have been of the belief with a 360 camera that I'm making 360 videos. I'm not. I'm taking videos with a 360 camera. Completely different perspective.
Right. Yep.
Where I'm able to assign what I want the guest to look at, visually, two-dimensional or not, they can see that. And from that, I have all the toys of things and the things that can be done with this camera. Answers to a little bit of our over tourism thing in a strange way. It's a long string connection. Is the ability to show in an engaging way these secondary markets, these alternatives to these primaries, these discoverable things that up to this point haven't been marketed in a way or presented in a way that people would find attractive, are now those doors are kind of being opened because you're getting these kids on skateboards and things with these. I have and I'm not exaggerating, I have a 10-foot selfie stick. It's a carbon fiber 8-ounce selfie stick that is 10 foot long. Now you
may say, Lord, is of course you do. Of course you do.
You think, what could I possibly be doing with something like this? I actually pulled a video clip I was going to do a share screen on, depending upon our conversation, of the craziness that a $400 360 camera on the end of a carbon 10-foot pole or a swinging selfie stick or a Nerf balloon that you throw, what you can do with these things and edit them on your phone in real time. And I say this from a point of contribution to hotels and marketing in general. The things you can do for yourself, even if it's not you personally, but just a team member that has an intrinsic interest in this is crazy. So we can either go that, or we can finish off the conversation with the summer travel stats.
Well, I'd like to talk about the summer travel stats. But let's talk about this for a second, because I think your point about the ability to virtualize, for lack of a better word, the experience and show people these great videos and the like is fantastic, right? Is definitely a good thing from a marketing perspective. I always not worry, but but we want to be really conscious that we want to use it as a way to entice people to the experience, not as a substitute.
Not as a substitute. I completely agree. Yes.
You know what I mean? I'm always reminded. About. Robin Williams has this great monologue, in Good Will Hunting, right?
Mm.
Remember the movie Good Will Hunting? He's the therapist. He's talking to Matt Damon's character and things.
Oh yeah, one of the most powerful scenes in the movie. Powerful scenes. Yeah.
Totally. And but this is early in the movie. They've had a disagreement early in the movie. Matt Damon's character breaks down the painting and talks to him about, maybe this woman left you and all this other kind of stuff. And Robin Williams' character is, taking him to task for that later. And he says, you don't have the faintest idea what you're talking about. And he says something to the effect of, you talk about art and things like that. I bet you can't tell me what it smells like in the Sistine Chapel, right? And you've never been there and actually seen it.
Yeah.
And I think that, for all of these things, when we talk about AR or VR or any of these kinds of things, or 360 video or whatever, they have tremendous value if we use them correctly to augment the experience and to promote the experience, but not to substitute for the experience.
No, I completely agree with you. Absolutely, 100%. This is not to say, I don't need to go to Venice. I'm just going to go VR it. It doesn't.
Right.
It's not.
Nor do I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah. No, this is. If you want to know more about your experience prior to going, and you want to educate yourself to know what to look for to not miss, that can be helpful. Or if you feel that maybe in going future tense that there's a restrictiveness as to how often or how many people can go to Venice, and you're looking for alternatives of experience, and this gives you a tool to Cinque Terre, amazing place. I mean, and I'm sure it's probably over tourist at this point too, or whatever, but probably not near to the scale the Venice is. But the beauty of being there, to being on the coast. I mean, it fundamentally changed how I traveled. When Renee and I went there, we were all about seeing as much as we could when we could. I mean, we weren't these pre-programmed scheduled people, but we put a whole list together. Renee would, she put this whole list together, all the things that are available, and then we would choose what we want to see or do that particular day. And we're staying, and I still remember to this day, we were staying in this beautiful Crown Plaza hotel on the cliff, and we stepped out overlooking the water, looking towards Naples, and so let's get a cup of coffee and let's figure out what we're going to do today in Naples. And we're thumbing through the stuff. This goes back a ways. She had printed it all out. And we're going through all this. Oh, we can do this. And we don't want to miss that. Yeah. We're looking, what do we do? And let's get another cup of coffee. It's beautiful here. Spent the whole day just there. Just sat and for that moment realized it's about as important about realizing and appreciating where you are than it is all the stuff that you need to do. And from that moment forward, every travel experience we have, it is a mandatory stop. Just be there. Just be there, and that for no other reason than that VR will never do that for you. I can make it as realistic as I want to, but I know I'm sitting in an artificial space looking at what's been created for me. There's no denying what you know. And so those things, that's travel. That's the beauty of travel. And VR, but if I wanted to know what it was like to be there looking out over what I appreciated so much, to know that that's something I want to do, that's where these things come helpful. Yes.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and, to go back to the Gen Z thing for a second, and I don't remember if this was in the Condé Nast Traveler article or if this was in the underlying research that they were calling out. But one of the things that was interesting about a difference in Gen Z, and again, these folks are not travelers today, and we're probably 10 years before they're legitimately traveling in any kind of meaningful numbers, right? As the primary traveler, right? Is there was a point in there about the fact that unlike millennials, less like millennials, and I would argue lots of older people too, they have begun to recognize there's some value in putting the phone down, right? Like they like to disconnect from technology too. And I can see this even with my kids, my 23-year-old daughter and my 21-year-old daughter. They're only 2 years apart. They were raised in the same house, and the way they interact with tech is very different from that perspective. There's a lot of similarities.
Sure.
And, also my daughter puts her phone down all the time. My younger daughter puts her phone down all the time just to sit and look at nature, So, there's definitely this this is going to get very like pseudo deep for a second. It's not meant to be because I'm not that deep a guy, really. But there's this, idea of when you're faced with all the speed in the world, right? Everything's moving faster and everything's coming at you a million miles per hour, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The best response may, in fact, be to slow down, right? To kind of pull yourself out of that stream of being, flooded with all this information and being forced to consume all this information and say, I'm going to take a step back and start looking for forest and not trees. Start looking for the path that the river takes and not just the onrushing river.
No,
and it seems like the data seems to suggest that Gen Z may do that more naturally. Maybe.
No, I don't disagree with you at all. I mean, it's funny you say. I lived through and was an ardent believer that multitasking was possible. And I was, and still today, it's like, how many things can I do simultaneously? I mean, I got 2 computers up and a laptop and my phone's over there. I mean, I got all these things going on, but I've quantified to a small space. As I used to be heavy into martial arts, and this whole idea of Zen and centering is singularity. It's being in the moment. And I find myself now in a routine of going out in the morning and sitting on a cup of coffee on the patio without electronics. Just sit, enjoy the fact that I'm looking out over something pretty or something. And I think, from a hospitality perspective, since we're not a philosophical show, is the fact that we as hoteliers and hospitality-driven people have to appreciate that we have to afford that opportunity for our guests, that we have to give them the comfort that all things are being handled, that they get to appreciate the now, appreciate the here. Not that we're denying them access to things. We're not here to give them a phone-free zone and you had to put it into a safe.
Right.
That's them to decide how they want to restrict themselves.
Right.
It's about being able to give them the quality of presence that it is enjoyable. The food is tasty. Right. The place is clean. The location is wonderful for them to discover from. Whatever it is, we have to be that provider, and not to be where we're forcing them through these funnels all the time of, well, to do that you need this kiosk and this engagement and this autonomy and this, you're going to be here in this common space and share it with everybody. No, there's times that it needs to be a variation of those things. So, yeah, to your point, I think well made is that there's this presence of moment that is coming up through the generational ranks that we as hospitality people have to be mindful of, that as we grow into that market, or that market grows into us, that we give them that luxury of expansion, that we're not that multitasking, everything has to be functional for them for. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So these vacation numbers, I found it very bipolar.
Yeah. Well, I have a theory as to why they're bipolar, but please,
because I was hoping we could talk about this article with you, because this is like bizarre. I put the link up for everyone on the show to watch so you can see it.
So if you want to talk through the numbers first, I have some thoughts about this.
Okay, so I'm going to hit a couple of the ones I thought were kind of opposite of each other. Okay, so more than half, 57% of Americans did not take a leisure trip longer than 4 nights in the past year. A trend led by millennials, which we might explain off as being the financial component of that. I understand that. Okay. Then, half of Americans would take a job with no paid time off for a higher salary. So half people would say, I'd forego my vacation, but they would require a 48% raise for the trade-off. But I'll take half again my salary almost to do it.
Which, of course, they're not going to get. But anyway.
All right. So those two things kind of go together. Fewer people are taking longer trips, and they much rather take the money than they would to take the time. Those kind of go together. But then it starts going up. 1 in 3 Americans would give up a portion of their paycheck for an unlimited vacation. 1 in 3. So on the other side, unlimited vacation, while 1 in 10 employees, 12%, they said, already have it, which means you already have the ability to take unlimited time away. 1 in 10 people, 12%, but they're not doing it. But 1 in 3 would want it, but then only 57% of the people would take it that only take a trip for only 4 nights, and half of America would forego the whole vacation process.
Right.
Okay, so now we're already starting this way. 6 out of 10 Americans say it's important to take an annual week-long vacation. So 6 out of 10 people say we should take a vacation, but over half the people would forego it. Yet more than half don't even take anything over 4 days.
Yep. No, this all makes total sense.
Okay, but only 4 out of 10 are confident that they'll take a summer vacation this year.
Yep.
The lowest percentage. Yet I'm sorry I didn't hit the first stat just because I thought it was a financial one. But in contrast, from the one I just said, that, okay, 6 out of 10 Americans say it's important to take an annual week vacation, only 10%, but then only nearly 2/3 who aren't confident they're going to even take a vacation this year. Yet this summer exceeded, for the first time in a decade, how much was spent on summer vacations at $101.7 billion at an average expense of $2,000 or more. So more money was spent this summer, yet fewer people think they can take the vacation. More people will forego a vacation, but most people say they should take a vacation. And only 4 out of 10 Americans are likely to share economy services in 2012. Well, that's like, okay, that's still a growing thing, but it just, seems just two sides.
This makes tons of sense to me. Makes tons and tons of sense to me.
Okay,
and
please enlighten me on this, because you have the great ability to cut to the quick on these things, and I'm sitting here going, it's like polarity for me.
I want to be fair. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. This didn't come to me from this article. This is actually something I've been watching for the last couple of years, because it's a crucially important trend. Set of trends, I should say, right? First, more broadly, Lauren, you and I have had some debates and discussions and things along those lines about demographic targeting and things along those lines. Okay. First, this speaks to the problem with demographic targeting. This speaks to the problem with all kinds of targeting other than behavioral targeting. I want to be clear. Those other things bring value in other ways because they help you understand the why, and they can help you understand how to message and all that kind of stuff. But what people say and what people do are usually two different things, are often two different things, right? I go to the gym regularly, right? If you ask me, do I work out regularly? The answer is yes. If you observe whether or not I work out regularly, it depends a lot on the week. But I always intended to.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
So if you ask me, am I going to go to the gym this week? Absolutely. Am I going to work out this week? Or tomorrow or whatever? Sure. Oh, but something came up.
Yeah.
So what I say and what I do, there's a big distinction between. People say people should take a vacation. Yes, I absolutely agree with that. Right? Oh, but I can't because I got this pile of projects I got to get through. Or, my boss is all over me about X or Y or Z. Or I just can't afford it right now. Whatever the rationale is, whatever the reason. But what I meant to do and what I said I would do and the like and what I actually did, there's always diversity between those things. And you always have to look at what do people do, not what do they say they will do. And there's tons of examples like this, tons and tons and tons. There is I've probably told this story on the show before, but I love this story. It's one of my favorites. There's a long-standing belief. So Fox Television, not Fox News, but when we're talking broadcast TV, for a long time in this country, there were 3 major networks: ABC, CBS, NBC. Right? They were the big 3.
Right.
And then Fox Television came along in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, and became the 4th network, the 4th major network. They weren't the first ones to try it. They were just the first ones to succeed. Prior to Fox, there was Dumont. Prior to Dumont, there was somebody else who I can't remember because it goes back too far. But the 4th one always failed, right? Always, until Fox came along. And there's a strong belief that the reason Fox succeeded was because Nielsen changed the way it did the ratings right around the same time. It used to be if you were a Nielsen family, you filled out a journal, you filled out a diary saying what you watched. And around the same time that Fox launched, Nielsen introduced the People Meter, which actually recorded what people watched, actually tracked what people watched. And so what likely happened, according to the theory, is that when the Nielsen families would write in their diary what they watched, they would, say 60 Minutes and Walter Cronkite and, Masterpiece Theater on PBS or things like that, because that's what they meant to watch. Right. Oh, yeah, I'm going to watch the sophisticated, erudite stuff. What did they actually watch? Cops and Married with Children and all the, brain candy stuff that Fox put on TV, right? And advertisers were like, we don't care what people said they watched. We want to talk to the people who are actually watching the show. And that actually led to Fox being successful, right? And
that's true. That's neat. I never thought about that, but yes.
There's tons and tons of examples like that. If you ask most people in this country, do they go to church? They say yes. right? It comes around in study after study after study. If you actually track the number of people who go to church, it falls every year.
Sure. But I mean, it's also the question.
I meant to go to the gym,
right?
Right.
Well, it goes back to the type of question.
Johnny had a baseball game. He had a soccer game, right?
Yeah. But I mean, it's also how they, asking an open question. Do you go to church? Yes. Did you go to church once, twice, or 3 times this week?
Right. Exactly. But even then, it could be, well, I'm going to go Sunday.
Right. Even then, you have the series of interpretation. Yes, I plan on going twice this week. So yes, twice this week.
Exactly. Yeah. Versus if you actually stand at the church door and count people as they come in, you're going to get a different number every time. And there's tons of examples of this kind of stuff especially when it comes to values, right? Am I watching educational programming or am I watching brain candy? Am I going to go to church or am I not going to go to church? Am I going to save versus do I actually save money? Right? What people do and what they say they'll do. Should I take a vacation because I know it's good for my mental health and it decompresses and yada, 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 versus will I actually take the vacation that I wanted to take?
Mm-hmm.
Right? The difference between what people claim they do and health, wellness, values, etc., versus what they actually do. There's always a huge gap between those in almost every study I've ever seen that looks at those kinds of things. So that's part of the bipolarity of those responses.
No, that's
bipolarity
that's true.
Is some of those questions are very much around what people intend to do versus what they actually do, right?
Yeah. I was thinking it was more of an aspirational answer versus an actual answer.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. That's the way I would think about it. The second thing is there is absolutely some economic component to this. And this is where we got to get back to millennials for a second. And this is huge. And people have to recognize that this is going to be true for the next 10 years. Millennials are now the largest single demographic in this country. Right? Depending on the other countries in the world, in most of the developed world, most of the what is sometimes called the first world. I actually don't like that term, and a lot of people don't like that term anymore. But millennials tend to be the largest single demographic because unfortunately, boomers and the silent generation, folks like that, are beginning to age out of the marketplace. Right. Secondly, millennials are the largest single group of business travelers, and they're the largest single group of leisure travelers, right? Second largest share of leisure travelers. Okay. But there's 73 million Gen X. There's 72 million boomer. Excuse me. Sorry, I misspoke. 73 million millennials. Millennials are the largest. If I said a moment ago Gen X, I beg your pardon. Millennials are the largest single demographic segment in America. They are also the largest share of business travelers. There's 73 million millennials, 72 million boomers, 66 million Gen X. These are all, by the way, these are all Pew numbers, as you might imagine, because, like I said, that's who I usually go for some of these. Millennials are the largest share of business travelers. They have, now this is not Pew, this is somebody else. They have more travel days than any other demographic, millennials do. 35 travel days per year versus 27 for boomers versus 26 for Gen X. Right? Now, travel days, that's business and leisure.
Right.
And they've got economic problems. So what they tend to do is they tend to do a lot more bleisure travel, right? Where they add on time. This was what people say versus what they do. So I want to make sure this is a what people say answer, not a what people do answer. I don't have a what people do answer on this. Okay. But on what terms of what people say, millennials, 81% said they probably will add extra time to a business trip versus 56% of Gen X and 46% of boomers. Now, that's a big difference.
That's a huge difference.
Why? Because they're poorer, generally speaking. Right? And then the other factor is, and this is another what they say versus what they do, 50% of millennials consider themselves, and this gets to a story we'll talk about later, but 50% consider themselves travel hackers in that they'll shop around and find the best deal and stuff like that, versus 26% of Gen X and 12% of boomers, which is crazy differences there, right?
It's huge, yeah.
Right. So some of those questions that were coming up were things about, oh my gosh, if you'll give me half again my salary, yeah, I won't take vacation.
Right.
Because I need the money.
Right.
Now, you put me in a workplace. My wife works in a place that has unlimited vacation. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Does she take unlimited vacation? Of course not. She probably takes less vacation now than she did when she got, 3 weeks or whatever it was, because you're too busy. Right? And this is going to be a weird thing. I'm not criticizing where my wife works by any stretch, any stretch. I did a study years and years and years ago. We did a training thing when I worked at Schwab where we did gamified training, and it was wildly popular, right? Worked really well, except for with the folks who worked on the trading desks. They all hated it. Nobody used the training at all, right? This was all web-based training, digital, digitally delivered, et cetera. And none of the people on the trading desks liked the training or used it. And the reason was because culturally, what do you do if you're a trader?
Unless you're working, you're not making money.
Exactly. What are you doing if you're playing a game?
Not making money.
Exactly. Whereas if this is training that I have to take, but it looks like work, at least I'm working. But culturally, they felt very uncomfortable playing a game at their desks because now I'm not making money, right?
Interesting. Well, it is. I mean,
so I'll give you unlimited vacation, but culturally, can you really take unlimited vacation?
Right.
Right.
No, politics, especially when you're working your way through the ladder, and you know who your competitors are and who your peers are in competition, I should say. Not your competitors, your peers in growth. And if you're out there taking twice as much as they are, and it comes time for a position that you both are going for, what's the consideration?
Whether that's true or not, what do you think the consideration is going to be?
Exactly. Perception. It's a matter of perception for that part to it. And
right.
It is true. It is a golden cage. It is funny looking back, through the growth of it. It's like when running a hotel, I would sit in front of the group and say, the person that doesn't need to be here today for this place to be a success is me. I'm the GM. If the housekeeping wasn't there, we couldn't clean rooms, we couldn't resell them, front desk, on and on and on. But I was also the least likely not to take that luxury of going away, because the perception of those that I would work for and with and who work with me would be like, oh, must be nice. Or, yeah, well, gee, pop in at noon, huh? You don't do those things as an example for those who are following, and you don't do those things for those that you answer to, because you want the perception of opportunity, should it come up, to be a favorable one because of your dedication to it. So it is a gilded cage. It's just the door is open, you can walk out, but you don't want to.
Exactly right. So if you asked me, if I could increase my salary by 50%,
and you're already doing it,
and just know that I'm not going to take vacation that I know I'm not going to take anyway, I'd say hell yeah, I would do that.
Yeah, right? Give me more money for it. Absolutely.
So that's where this, I think, comes into play in this data.
Excellent explanation.
Because I've taken a lot of look at millennials specifically and what they mean to what we do as travel marketers as we go forward. Because the takeaways that I always share with people on this are things like, we have to focus more on upsell when we talk about millennials, right? We know that they have less money. We know that they are more likely to add time onto a trip. So how do you do a good job of targeting folks who are... Now, this is where demographic targeting does matter. If you understand folks fall into this demographic segment versus this demographic segment, do we send the offer about upselling on a business trip to this set of folks and not to this set of folks? Because these people are less likely to do it, and B, I'm here for business. I just want to do my business trip and then go home and take a real vacation with my family because I can afford to, versus, oh man, I want to spend a couple extra days and enjoy the place while I'm here anyway, since the company paid for me to get here. Great. Now, is it more likely that that's even better identified by their past behaviors? Of course. But in the absence of that data, can you use demographic targeting to make some assumptions at the start? Absolutely too. right? So go ahead and, you know, if you have a sense of what their ages are, go ahead and set it, you know, separate it that way, right?
You know what? You just gave me a moment of thought, and just an answer to a question in my head. Remember, I was telling you about my music filtering
Yep.
targeting, and I didn't have a clarity as to why it was impacting the conversions. Just while you're talking about, I thought this through. Okay, so I was thinking about, as you're talking about targeting based on simulation of demographics. Okay,
And
right
by the way,
now,
share what you're doing with the music thing, because this is cool.
oh,
And
okay.
people should
Yeah.
understand what you're
So,
doing
you know,
if they haven't
I was
seen
doing
the show before.
campaigning. You know, Twitter, of course, is a unique channel for marketing in the sense that it's a very here now. It's a very present buy. It's a big hit the red button. It's not a conversational story building engagement. This is awareness, purchase, boom, boom, boom. And one of their filtering capabilities, it allows you to select music genre and even down to artists. And I was doing campaigns for promotions for actually HSMAI. And I put a campaign in there for a short compression of opportunity for late minute registration bookings and so forth. And I just, as a whim, decided to flip on the music genre filtering and pick a few categories of music genre. And it literally tripled my initial conversions on the same campaign. And then I picked artists within those genres, you know, the Taylor Swifts, the Kelly Clarkson's, whatever. And it doubled even again on the tripling of that. So it was this huge, like, and nothing else changed. Messaging didn't change, content didn't change, frequency didn't change, nothing changed other than the fact that I was isolating out different filterings for exposure to the messaging that I'd already been putting out. And I have no answer, and I still don't have an answer, but I have a better lending to some of this. When you're talking about this, I'm thinking, well, you know, my first response when you first started talking about it was like, you know, the other thing we don't mention is that millennials, or those under 40, have the largest student loan debt ever known to history.
Yep.
Trillions of dollars of
Yep.
debt. Yep. I mean, that includes everybody else as well, exes and everybody else, but the debt structures there. So for them, answering some of that, you know, I'd much rather take the money now to get out from underneath this. So time I can have the choices, like you're saying, you know, the amount of time spent on travel days is so much lower for baby boomers. Well, first off, they don't tend to expand their business travel with leisure dates as much because they can actually take leisure dates because they're on a different cycle. Okay,
That's
they can go,
exactly right.
hey, screw you. I'm going to take my family vacation. Thank you very much, because in about 5 years, you're going to replace me anyway. You know. So for them, they're on that cycle of, you know what, no, I am going to take vacation time and not build up my business time. So I was thinking about all the rationales of interpreting the numbers.
And by the way, the oldest of the boomers, would, you know, no offense to them, I mean, just a statement of fact, the earliest ones were born in 1946. They're 73 years old. They're probably retired anyway. They're probably traveling less because they're not doing business travel. And when they are traveling, it's pure leisure, right?
Pure leisure. And they're on the fixed incomes and so forth. So they're pre-structured as to what they're going to be doing and how they're wanting to do it anyway.
Exactly.
And on and on and on. Yeah, there's a whole mix of stuff as to why. It's just not a single thing of I'm still working and I'm not going to expand my business travel. But all that said, I was trying to figure out, well, how can I isolate out modality of travel? Because there's a flip of a switch that I definitely in marketing terms understand. When you have family, two switches actually happen. When you get married, that's flip switch 1. Now your travel plans have an expanded value proposition. And flip switch 2 is when you have kids. And that goes into incrementality of age groups. When you have kids initially, until they're 3 to 5, travel is not one of those options. It's a very interesting option. And it's a very localized option. It's a very family related option.
Or you're very rich. Right, you're fairly afloat.
There's always that up over there. Yeah,
but I mean, you travel in a different way, right?
Yeah, you do. You travel in a different way, and the age of the children is not a consideration of travel restrictions.
It is just in a different way.
Then when you get into the 5 to 7 category, there's the magic of the Magic Kingdom. There's the magic of those things.
Orlando does become the happiest place on earth.
And there's I threw another article in about Universal's new expanded park, but that's one that Robert didn't throw in. But the new park that's coming that way. Sure. But in the first new park since the late whenever. But cool. And then there's the 7 to 10 where the magic is still there, but the engagement is higher. And then there's the 10 to 13, which is the last remnants of dad and mom still know everything, or kind of mostly everything. And then after the 13 where they don't know anything and I don't want to be near them thing. So, but anyway, but that whole progression thing. So I'm thinking it's like, well, how could I isolate demographically because you can't bias your marketing, okay? But to isolate out the young traveler yet to be married who wants to add that one extra day, okay, to their business travel, to say, you know what, I'm in New York. It's not on my dime. I would never be able to afford New York. I got too much student loan debt. Business got me here, but if I stretch it a day, I'll take it, and I'll hit the Freedom Tower. I'll hit the Statue of Liberty. I'll hit whatever it is I wanted to see to do.
Whatever it is you want to see, right? Exactly.
How do I want to hit those? How do I want to target them to get them that shoulder expansion? How do I want to get them that one extra day to it, right? And music is what I just love. I was like, son of a gun. If I genre out music by age, by when the artist became its peak, you know, Boys to Men and Backstreet and all those, are a certain age group. So too is Taylor Swift. So too is whatever. You know, if you tailor out those music genres to get the messages to those people that like that particular genre of music, bang! I got a way of identifying them without biasing them according to their age.
Right. Well, that's exactly right. And again, because behavior is more important than demographic in this particular perspective, right? Right. Even the folks who are older, who are still, you know, if you're somebody who's really into, you know, Eminem, you're probably more like the people who like Eminem. If you're somebody who really, you know what I mean? Like your behaviors probably align on other categories as well, broadly speaking.
Right. I mean, obviously,
all this is until you get actual data that you can use to actually personalize, right? We're starting with how do we cast the widest but most specific net we can until we have data to actually say, okay, now I want to talk to Lauren because I know what Lauren is going to do.
Right. And I mean, content driven also. I mean, obviously, if you're talking about nightclubs and nightlife and things, you're talking about a genre of interest. You know, there's still content segmentation you can do. But music, I mean, wow, what more of a scalpel can you get? There is genre and there are artists. And those are, yeah, exactly. Mr. Guitar Man. But yeah, so no, thank you. That gave me a neat insight. I'm gonna start doing a little A/B love with that on some campaigns.
Yeah. Absolutely.
See if there's a difference to it, because, like I said, I've been inspired with what Ed and Stuart are doing in the sense of conceptualizing, answering the first and most fundamental question, which is time. What time are you interested in traveling? Once that happens, and I understand that, I can identify content that may be more relevant to you based on that first question being answered.
Exactly right. Because it's going to play a role from a behavior perspective, right? Mm-hmm. I'm acting differently. Am I ready to buy right now? In this is something that's kind of fallen out of favor a little bit in B2B marketing, but was big for years. Sales, account-based marketing, sales-driven stuff was something known as BANT, right?
BANT.
Yep. And I can't remember what the B is now. I really should remember what the B is. Oh, duh. I know exactly what it is. It's this was a useful proxy to qualify leads, if you were in B2B sales of any kind, right? And it was budget. How much do you have to spend, right? Remember, this is important from B2B. Authority. Are you the person who can sign the contract, or do I need to talk to somebody else who can sign the contract? Need, right? Is this urgent for you? Is this I shouldn't say urgent. Is this really important to you? Is this more of a nice to have, etc.? And the T is timing. Are we going to close this deal this quarter, next quarter, this year, right? Because you saw different behaviors. Folks who we all work in business, all of us who do this for a living, it's always, well, I've got budget I have to spend by the end of the year, and it's use it or lose it. I'm probably more likely to sign the contract than somebody who's like, we're kicking the tires and seeing where
we're looking around. We're looking around.
Right. And that's going to be true for consumers for sure. Actually, it's really funny. I was just doing some research on this for a client on something else entirely. But I was looking across a variety of different sites, and it was amazing the number of sites that we looked at where most of the traffic that comes to the site has come to the site within the last 7 days. And what I mean by that, most of the sessions, most of the people who are on your site at any given time, it doesn't matter how many times they've visited, it means that most of their visits will occur within a 7-day window. And then, if they don't come back within that 7-day window, the likelihood that they're going to come back is going to drop a lot.
Sure. Yep.
A lot. And so the reason that I'm thinking of this is, obviously, somebody who's looking at something today, is this their first visit and I'm not going to see them again for 3 months because they're so high in the funnel Or is it somebody who's, I'm here this week because I'm making plans because I'm ready to book this week? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I might come back 3 times over the course of the week, or 4 times or 5 times, because I got to check with my traveling companion, spouse, husband, wife, partner, whatever. I want to make sure the kids are on board. If I may not necessarily show them the site, but I need to make sure they're cool with where we're going if kids are involved, et cetera. All the things you just said. But okay, I saw what I like. Now let me go check with the other folks who I'm traveling with, and then come back the next day or the next day, and then I make the decision. Right? Yeah, that's interesting.
No, there's a report, and you brought something up that all the revenue management platforms have this report. And I know we're going to try to hit the Rainmaker and Sendyne acquisition together and stuff like this. Revenue management software is becoming an integrated, necessary component for optimization for most people, unless they have a truly excellent revenue manager, and even then they need resources. But there's a report in there which is a channel frequency report, and and if you look at your direct analytics on Google, you'll see. First visit to acquisition, you always get this funnel of engagement, 1 to 10 days, 10 to, but there's usually, to break things down, there's usually 3 bumps in time sequence that happen. There's your direct channel engagement short-term window, there's your third party and your agency consortia and so forth. They all have this basically one to your book, what you consider your prime booking window, 1 to 14, 21 days prime booking window in here. Then you have a 30-day-ish bump, and then you have a 91 plusish to 120 bump.
Absolutely.
Or your free engagement, channel engagement stuff. And what we're doing and have been doing, and I have to give Bonnie Buckheiser credit for this, but she's the one that began to isolate these patterns out, is we're taking this this data. Statistics is what you get out of it. The data, and saying on each given date, what has been our sequence of engagements per channel based on time lead forward. So we have not a pace report, but an engagement.
No, right. Exactly right.
And from that, can we go back now looking at what we should have done on what channel when, based on what they were looking for by date
exactly right.
on a forward consider. And it's important that people look at it, because all they see is, we should be doing a lot more in short term. It's like, no. You should be looking at what your channel is per each of the time frames and identifying them for future reference to say, this time last year, we should be looking at this channel now for these dates, for these things, these rates.
And it's the same as for your content calendar. The same is true for your marketing campaigns, right?
Yep.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but I
no, that's you're perfect. That's perfect. Yes, yeah, exactly that. It's that lead-in time of looking at the data and saying what channels were engaged of interest at what date range for it at this particular time, so we know what to target. I mean, it's just as important as knowing geographically where it is that you're going to be putting your resources, because certain markets don't feed you at certain times of year because of certain things, certain interest levels.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right.
So it's a cool thing for it. Now, there's 2 articles we referred to. You mentioned the hacker one, and I thought that was interesting because
the hotel, Agoda's new quote unquote hacker rates.
Yeah, there's that one, and of course we can kick over. I'm hoping that Valen can, if she can make it, it'd be wonderful to talk to her.
Absolutely.
But if not, we'll definitely bring up her Nora One conversation with her new banner ad, or not ad, banner. But I put the hacker up on the ad.
The Agoda one.
I hate. That's a strong word. Agoda. I'm not a fan of Agoda.
Really, Lauren? Why is that?
I don't know. Something about rate parity and undercutting us by taking wholesaler rates and putting them up to open market. Something like that. I don't know. They are probably, to my mind, target number 1 on the dilution of rate integrity.
I completely agree. By the way. And I won't say hate, but there's a song by a band, one of those like punk pop bands a few years ago. I can't remember. It's like Plain White Tees or somebody like that. I don't remember the name of the band off the top of my head. But they had a song called "Hate is a Strong Word." Was the title of the song, and the chorus was "Hate is a strong word, but I really, really, really don't like you."
Yes, well, I empathize with that, because I am in constant. I've lost probably track of how many cease and desists and rate violation notifications and pursuant channels that they've diluted to with hashtag URLs that they've sold the inventory to, that I've been fighting with, of where the hell that rate come? And you have to end up booking it. You end up losing the monies, but at least you discover where this channel came from. And it all goes back to a well beginning with the word Agoda. And and so this a method of room hopping, hacker room hopping. It seems right up their alley. I mean, it's one of those things where sure I'll change rooms because I'm going to super mesh. And I think the point of the article, and I don't mean to take any thunder from what you might say, from a hotel operation point of view, there is a difference between clean and vacant and room ready and stayovers. There's a cost function variance to those. From taking somebody that checks out, okay, to just stay over where there's a certain cleaning level that isn't as thorough and a reset to the room as somebody that's checking out. And so now I have an increased operational cost. And the article did point out that there's an operational cost to this. If I'm going to move out of one room into another room, the guest may think, well, hey, that's no sweat off of you guys because the room had to be cleaned anyway. No, your room being re-cleaned by you staying in it has a different cleaning cycle, a reduced amount of cleaning cycle, cost time to the housekeeper, amenities, and everything else than it is for you to go into a clean, ready room. Right. So I'm not in any way a fan. I've not done this. I actually, I've put two reservations together. As soon as I walk into the hotel, I say, look, I have two reservations. Can I just stay in the same room?
Yeah.
I'll ask them that. Because I couldn't, they had a fence somewhere that I couldn't stay extra day or couldn't get in a certain day. I have done back-to-back reservations on something because I just needed the whole time slot and I didn't want to change hotels. But I've never purposely done room hopping simply to take marginalized rate variances on room types. Didn't do that.
Yeah, I have a nuanced take on this. This is going to be, complicated. I'll try to do this in 100 words or less. First of all, I agree with you. By the way, I looked it up. It was the Plain White Tees who sang "Hate is a Strong Word," but nonetheless, I'm just pleased I got that right. I'm certainly not going to defend Agoda, generally speaking, right? Because I think a lot of their practices are terrible. I also do want to say that, and I think it's important to say, that they are clearly responding to a demand in the marketplace, right? We know there are people out there who are discount shoppers, who are price sensitive, who are, I don't like the term value seekers because I think that's a nonsense term. Everybody seeks value. Everybody seeks value. It doesn't matter if I'm spending, $100 a night or $1,000 a night. I don't want to feel like I'm getting ripped off when I do it.
Right.
So let's talk about what people really are. They are searching for a discount. They are searching for, a sale. Some folks are motivated by things that are, the perceived discount, right? Strike-through pricing works for a reason because sometimes there's a set of people who want to see, I got a good deal on this, right? And that's who
quantity pricing. Last 5 available. That thing,
Exactly. But these are Agoda's customers, right? It's the same folks who used to be really popular with Travelzoo. It's the same folks who used to be, popular with Groupons, et cetera, to a certain degree. These are folks who are looking for a deal or Agoda's doing the right thing, and I'm doing the biggest air quotes in history around this, in that they are taking care of who their customer is, right? Now, let me be really clear. I want to be really clear about this. That doesn't mean that you as a hotelier are obligated to play that game, right? Yeah. There was a quote in the article from Philip Neiman, who's the group vice president of Asia Pacific at Duetto, who said, hoteliers must pay close attention, and I'm going to emphasize strongly a couple points. He said, hoteliers must pay close attention and ensure heavy discounting is the right strategy. While it may drive occupancy, it may actually harm profitability. I don't think the problem is that Agoda is necessarily making it easier for people to do the behavior that they're going to do anyway. I think the problem is often we price things in such a way that it allows that behavior to exist in the first place. If you've got deeply discounted inventory because you've got a legitimate, let me say that a different way. If you have 4 consecutive nights that are distressed inventory and you're not selling them as a 4-night package for a really discounted price, you're probably pricing it wrong in the first place.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
You're better off saying, hey, here's our stay 1 night, get this price. Stay 2 nights, get a better price. Stay 3
Mm-hmm.
nights, get a better price. Stay 4 nights, get a better price. So it gets rid of this problem of, you gotta clean the room and stuff like that. If it's legitimately distressed inventory for 4 consecutive nights. If it's
Right.
not, why are you pricing each of those nights at a rate where one night gets you such a good deal in the first place? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's just having your pricing strategy the wrong way round.
Right. Well, now there is one pit hole, the two that from a bad pricing point of view. Say, for instance, you have a mandatory arrival date to an
Like close
event-driven.
to arrival, close to departure. Yep, sure,
Yeah,
sure.
and then you can't get a duration discount going into that event-driven gateway. You can only get 2 days up to the wall. Then you have to the reservation has to go for arrival for the date after. So you have to, you buy your couple days ahead, and you have to buy the day after because you have to have an arrival date for the next reservation. Arrival date restrictions are very sharp two-edged sword.
Correct.
Where you
That's
think you're
exactly
preventing
right.
some things,
That's
but you're also
exactly right.
catalyzing other things.
That's exactly right.
You got to be careful when you make that fence. That's a hard fence. That's better to make it a soft fence where you're
Correct.
looking to reward arrival than it is to close arrival. So yeah, it's a tough one to figure out on those sometimes.
Yeah,
But
and that's kind of the point I'm trying to make is some of the people who are having problems with this. The problem is not that Agoda is making it easy for customers to find that you have deeply discounted inventory. The problem is that you have deeply discounted inventory. You know what I mean?
yeah, yes.
If there's anything the internet has done over the last 20 years, for better or worse, is it has created opportunities for transparency. I would go so far as to say it has made transparency the norm, right?
Mm-hmm.
The if you want to be really technical about this, a lot of pricing theory that predates the internet was built on what is called an information disparity, right?
Mm.
I know something you don't know,
Yes.
and thus you are uneducated, you are ill-informed deliberately by me, and thus
Right.
I have a lot of pricing power, right?
Right.
Okay. What you get with the internet, what you get with a lot of these things is price transparency. You get information parity. The information is there for anyone to know. And if your entire pricing strategy depends on your customer being a moron about what your prices really are, that's not a great place to start.
Mm-hmm. Well,
They can't find a lower price, so let's make it worthwhile for them to pay a higher price in the first place.
And that's and I know I'm going to harp on this vagueness that Ed St. Ange with Flip2 and Stuart with Fuel Travel are doing, but it is actually flipping that conversation around because, like I said, right now we play a shell game of rates. If you don't know, then I get to get away with it. If you do think you know something, if I shuffle it enough around, I'll confuse you enough that you think you know what you know, but you didn't really get what you needed.
That's right.
Change that to your point. Show the value proposition of what you're offering, so that the price means something that is worthy of their consideration.
That's exactly right.
And again, I'm trying not to be, it's not my story to tell you what
Sure.
they're doing,
I'll walk you away from that so you don't say anything you can't say. I mean, it doesn't matter what they're doing, not because it's not a good idea. It's a great idea. It matters what they're doing because so many hotels don't do that, right?
Yeah.
The folks, again, I go back to the point of, if you've got these deeply discounted rates that are there for people to find, the problem isn't that they can find them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. If that's the only thing that's kicking your ass, maybe you should think about what you're actually charging for those rooms on those dates in the first place, or come up with a pricing strategy altogether. Do a minimum length of stay. To your point about close to arrival and close to departure, a lot of properties that I know don't use those. They do minimum length of stay instead. You want to be there Friday night, you have to stay Saturday too.
Right.
Because I'm going to sell the property anyway.
Right.
right?
I'm still going to sell. Right. The fact that I need you a couple of days now, and I don't want to say that everybody is evil and doing bad things. Their best intents can be out there. But to make a great example of this is that, and I used to use it in the presentation. I don't do it anymore. I pulled up a hotel's package offers, and it was mind-numbing, the variation combinations, coordinations, variations. If you just okay, so if I get that one, I get the breakfast continental, but I don't get the free bottle of water when I arrive. But if I get this one, I get the full hot breakfast. I get the water, but then I don't get the type of room that I want. And you're like, why are you putting your guests through this? I know you intended well. I know you intended to give them variations of offers that accommodated their particular interest. But what you did was create this paralysis of choice.
Right.
And instead, here's why do you need to be with us? Let us allow you the value of consideration. You want to come at a certain time, great. This is all the things to consider that we have available during the time of consideration. Here's what we can offer you. Let you find the value in that content and go from there. And it is like I said, revenue managers, simplicity, but not too simplistic that they don't feel like they have choices.
Yeah,
they're missing out.
Right.
But give them options that are viable, that are clearly comparable.
Correct. Right.
Tragic.
Well, I've said this before. I've said this many, many times on the show. My friend Mike Moran has a great line where, he says, and it comes from a marketing perspective. When people talk about differentiation, right? But this gets exactly what you were just saying, Lauren, that differentiation is not a thing that makes you different. It's a difference that people are willing to pay for, right? And if they're not willing to pay for the difference, you're not differentiated, right?
Yep.
Okay,
Very solid point.
You can turn that on its head. You can absolutely turn that around. If there's no difference in the product, they shouldn't be priced differently,
Right.
right? If it is not a clearly differentiated offer, sell it for the same rate as anything else. If you, Lauren, are going to get a really, really deeply discounted rate on Thursday night, why? What makes Thursday night so special that I'm going to give you a deeply discounted rate? And I would think there should be all kinds of hurdles around that to get that really, really discounted rate, right?
Exactly. Yep.
And if literally Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I have these, minimum length of stay, one night, super discounted rates, well, that's not a hurdle at all. Of course, people are going to find that, figure out how to put that together into their own package that works for their needs.
Sure. Of course it is. Of course it is.
Yep. Period. You want to stay, you're a resort property and, let me give a better example. You're a business property, you're a city center property and you want people to stay, Thursday nights. Sure, put a minimum length of stay on it. You want to stay Thursday, you also stay Friday. Actually, that's a terrible idea because that's not the problem. You know what I mean?
That's the problem. Yeah.
People who are showing up Monday, Tuesday have to have a 2-night minimum length of stay, right? Because I want to make sure they're here through at least Wednesday, right? That kind of thing.
Sure.
But Friday, Saturday, and Sundays are always empty, or Friday, Saturday nights are always empty. Fine. Come up with a better way to package those that make it a better offer to somebody such that they will actually say, okay, if I get a discount, here's what it means,
No, very, very true. Very true. Hey, and I know we can probably elaborate more on it, but there was an article, and I'll pop it up, about Marriott and Alibaba.
Yeah.
I like that article for a couple of reasons. One was Marriott's long play initiative. Two, also showing that statistics are in the eye of the data being presented, because their increase in Bonvoy membership and so forth and so on, without it being truly defined where it came from, people are like, "Look how successful this our new program," and really it's a new introduction to a much more contained ecosystem in China. But their long play idea is solid. That I thought was a great recommendation coming compared to how hotels, and they did cite Hilton and so forth as an example of variation, but even hoteliers individually get very closed-minded as to short-term game, short-term revenue, short-term opportunity, here now occupancy, which I shouldn't say they should take their eye off the ball, but they sometimes get all-encompassing with that. And they forget there's a long play lifetime value proposition, long play engagement proposition that you should consider. And I thought that was kind of a minor example from what Marriott is doing with Alibaba about, right now there's this tension and so forth going on, but China's going to explode from an internal market that is
Oh,
very
has,
robust.
has exploded.
And yeah, truly in sense, yeah. To
The
now
middle
going
class
globalization.
population in China is bigger than the population of the United States.
Yes. Here, let me pull that article up for you because I thought it was really it was neat in the sense that Marriott's like looking for, and China does this. China as a culture does this. Timeline is a integral component of their strategies. It's not about solving it now only. It's about solving it now and long term solving it for the future. And their strategies include timelines,
Sure.
long timelines,
Well,
multi-generation timelines.
I've heard that that's not necessarily true. By the way,
What's
that's
that?
not necessarily true. That specific point about the
Oh, about generational? You don't think? No?
I don't know that I'm qualified to answer that, but I would say I've heard people who I respect and think a lot of who know China really well who've said that's not as true as people make it out to be. Though what does tend to differ is that because the capital markets are structured differently, they can be more patient on stuff.
Okay.
One of the problems we have, not problems, I shouldn't say it's a problem. Our capital markets here are great, they're fantastic, etc. One of the consequences of the way that they work is that they can often be driven by the quarterly earnings call,
Yes.
right? We tend to make decisions based on what we're going to be saying on the close of each quarter to the street, right? China doesn't have that same level of transparency. It doesn't have the same type of capital market in that regard, and so that they can take a slightly longer view from that perspective. But it's not so much that that everybody's sitting around with Confucian wisdom and thinking about where we're going to be 200 years from now.
Okay, I agree with you on that. I don't think it's a 200-year plan or something like this, but I would say
I'm exaggerating to make a point. By the way, I want to be really clear.
yeah,
50
because
years, right?
our entire United States, I think the variation is duration of culture. The Chinese culture's duration, of course, is much longer extended than the culture that we have in existence right now for us as U.S. Our oldest building isn't even in the flicker of an eye of some of the stuff, even in Europe. Just go any place in Europe and see something 1548. Are you kidding me? Or a castle that's 1,000 years old. And it's not because of the duration of the buildings, as it is a testament to the acknowledgement of the culture's history.
By the way, the Anasazi people of the Southwest would have a strong counter argument to that.
I'm saying the United States took over those people. Our projects, we do quarterly when it comes to capitalization and so forth, but our culture is very generationally centric, I feel.
Oh, sure.
And then the Chinese culture, when they first started building a wall, they said, this ain't going to be done for about 500 years, but you know what, let's get started. So
the Egyptians with the pyramids, you could say, anytime you talk about the ancient world,
yes.
I wouldn't necessarily extrapolate from what China did 2,000 years ago to what China is doing today is my point.
No. But I think from what you're saying is, when I see investors in China and so forth, and they see that they threw in a bunch of money and the company did not give them the money back in a short time frame, they're more compliant in allowing it to continue on because they bought into the culture of what they bought into the concept of it.
I disagree because also they don't have the same. Sorry, I'm going to take an enormous step back. Complex systems of any kind. When you talk about the capitalist system in the West, right, is an incredibly complex system. They were never designed, right? They emerged based on all kinds of factors, and all of those different factors play a role in why the world works the way it does today, right? And the same was true in China. It's just that they have a completely different set of factors that led to that. So I'll give you a real world scenario. To make this analogy pretty obvious. Why do you get your health care from your employer? In this country, why do you get your health care from your employer?
They negotiated the rates that they were able to pay, which is better than the rates that I could pay as an individual.
Nope.
Okay.
The reason you get your health care from your employer is because during World War II, we put in place wage controls, right? Because what the government planners of the time were worried about was the fact that, you, Lauren, are a critical employee to this critical industry that is critical to our war effort. And so we don't want you getting poached from your current company to go work for someplace else. And so they put in place wage controls. And the wage control said that company X could not pay more than company Y was paying for your services, right? This is what happened, right?
Okay.
So company Y said, you know what we can do? Great, we can't give you a better wage. We'll give you free health care. We'll pay for your doctor's visits. And literally, that's where employer-sponsored health insurance came from in the United States.
How does it come explain CEO stuff where they're 20, 50, 100 times more than their average paid employee? I mean,
because nothing was designed, it emerged over time, right? We want to make sure you're locked in for a while, right? You as a CEO. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you stock-based compensation. The stock-based compensation, you make more money when the stock goes up, right? Oh, and by the way, that's taxed a different way because the tax laws play. Like, nobody sat down and said, we want CEOs to make 100 times what the line employee makes, so let's design a system where that's so. Tax laws changed, both corporate tax and what you pay as an individual in terms of your income tax, et cetera, all changed. And suddenly people said, great, given those parameters, what's the best way for us to attract the best CEO? The best CEO. So my point in all of this, by the way, I don't want to range too far afield on this.
No.
My point in all of this is some of the ways things work in China is because of the design of the systems of how they work in China, as a for instance, and I don't know the specifics on this on the hotel industry as well as I should, but one of the things that tends to be true for many industries in China is that if you are an international firm, you're not a Chinese national firm, and you want to invest money into China, in many industries, the only way you can do it is by forming a joint venture.
Yes.
Now,
I know that. Yes.
Now, I think hotel franchising is okay in this one, and I'm not 100% sure, which is why Hilton can directly franchise, because you're technically, for practical purposes, you're in a joint venture because it's a local Chinese investor who actually owns the building you're franchising the flag to. But I'm not 100% clear on where that lines up. My point in all of this is what Marriott's doing is one way that it's taking advantage of whatever the rules and restrictions are in terms of how you get in place in China. What Hilton is doing is another way. What Hyatt did, which was a joint venture with another hotel company to launch a whole new brand, is another way. They're all looking for what's the best way to work given the constraints and the realities of the Chinese market and Chinese regulation and all those other kinds of things, which nobody invented. It grew over the let's be fair, really the last, 50 years or, I'm sorry?
No, it's in 90s. I'd say it's in the 90s, wouldn't it, when you said it's in the 90s?
Well, yeah, but the 90s grew out of the 30 years that came before that with the Cultural Revolution and things along those lines, right? I mean, the point being...
stepping stones, yeah.
It's all stepping stones that led to a place where the best way to enter the market tends to be with partnering with joint ventures and things along those lines. And Marriott's saying, we can get all this data. Well, they can get all this data about the Chinese consumer that they probably can't get here because there's different privacy laws.
Yeah.
I mean,
the ability to do business in China for business in China is astronomically different than what is for here in that sense by all stretches of it. And yes, to your point, I mean, I even just know from relationships that we've had in China, you got to have a bank. Your money has to be in the bank in China for what you're doing in China. And there's lots of things about that to this point. I think some of the fun things was that one of the other things I noticed too is with Alibaba is being able to put them into, was it Frisbee? Being able to make that and Marriott downplaying that it's not a channel distribution. They consider that direct channel, and it does create to me a gray zone question is like, if you're paying less than an OTA negotiated percentage, does that qualify as it not being an alternate channel at that point?
Well, I think that
matches your costs.
I think the question there, and if I can, tie this back to my larger, stranger point of complex systems versus, simple systems. I think it's a whole question of what's direct versus indirect depends on a lot of factors. Do you get the data, right? What data do you get? Right. Mm-hmm. One of the problems you have with a lot of OTAs is you don't get very much data about the guest, at all. Right. Mm. Even the email address gets tied to, the OTA and the like. So there's multiple things I would look at when I talk about a direct channel versus an indirect channel. I think there's a lot of different pieces you should look at. I think that this is a direct channel based on what I've read about it. For the near term, the question is what are Alibaba's commitments to Marriott that they can't turn off that channel, that they can, what I mean? Like, who controls access to the customer in the longer term?
Right.
It opens up a question of whether or not I would consider it truly direct versus indirect. But that's, that's probably stuff.
I think you hit it right on the head. I think who can flip the switch to close the door or open the door, or even if it can be closed, is really the definition of whether it's a direct channel or not. I mean,
plays a role. Plays a role.
Yeah, because I think that has a key component to that process to it.
I mean, if you put a booking button on Facebook and people clicked on the button and booked, is that a direct channel or is that an indirect channel?
Right. That's one thing that made my eyebrow kind of go over. And I'm reading, I'm like, so they're considering other channel as direct, and then I'm reading through it and it's like, so what? It made me ask the question: what do you create as the definition of direct channel from that? It's like, this does open a bit of a Pandora's box of questions when it comes to that. It's like, but all right. Dealer's choice for you. The Google gestures I thought was fascinating because it brings back the sans Steve Jobs back in the day with the big screen.
I have to be really honest. That's the only one I have not read.
Nothing more than Pixel 4 is coming out, and what they're doing is that they have this micro sonar sensor in their new Pixel 4 that allows you to do hand gestures. Very simplistic at first. There's only 4 or 5 gestures that it's going to be able to recognize: turning off music, changing music, answering a call, turning up volume. But you're literally doing gestures in front of the phone, and it's going to do the corresponding command action. And
how is that better? And not having read the article, this is just an honest question. How's that better than voice to do the same things?
I don't think it's a better choice.
Or like a button on screen.
Yeah, by not touching the screen. But I think the way I read the article is, one, being allowed that this is considered and identified as a different and the trademarkable kind of thing for them, that they have this ability to control the environment that this is being created in, number one. Two, it is the article relates it to the magic that was touchscreen. Because remember, before iPhone came out, the biggest thing about the iPhone was, here's this flat piece of glass. Yep. And now we touch screens thinking that inanimate objects are going to do something because we touch them. It's turned so much into a part of our culture of life, the magic of what Steve Jobs introduced. Because up to that point, back in the day with the BlackBerries and everything else, those were physical buttons you had to type. Yep. And now it's not. Well, so this added with voice, how it turns into Minority Report stuff, where you can flick a finger to change a page and move a hand and do a gesture and so forth, and combinations and talking, who knows? This collaboration of these new engagement possibilities is magic. I mean, this is, it's like us talking, 10 years ago, if you went over and the joke was, even in the movie Star Trek, when Scotty picked up the mouse and talked, it was a joke. Now we walk into a room, I walk into my home, it's like, okay, Google, turn on light 1 or whatever. And same too with the gestures, where it's like, okay, turn on such and such. Show me today's news. No. Yeah, play that one. And just by the hand gestures, it's done. No picking up a remote anymore. Who knows? Minority Report. That's where this came from. Is that it's rolling out in Pixel 4.
Interesting.
And it's just hand gesture stuff. So very simplistic right now, but we'll see.
Yeah, I will check out the article. I haven't read that one, so I don't know for sure. And I will tell you, when it comes to these kinds of things, I rarely make bold predictions one way or the other, because my hit rate on these has been roughly 50-50. Right? I'm like,
who knows?
Yeah, probably a good idea.
Yeah. Hey, I want to save, since Valen was not able to join us. I'm opening an invitation to Valen to, if she can see way clear next week, maybe week after, whatever her choice is. We'll save this article for her to discuss in person about her advertisement. Their new one is rolling out a new banner engagement, which I find very fascinating. I think it's a neat progression of what they've been doing about being able to upsell and show inventory availabilities and so forth. Be interesting to see for it. I did a couple of things that I wanted to go over, and there's a video, and I wanted to get your insights on it. That's why I'm dragging this into the conversation, other than the stuff that was out there.
Please. I think we've covered all the articles we're going to cover today anyway, just from a time perspective.
I want to make this big screen. Let's see if I can. I'm going to have to make it a little screen first. Let me do a screen share of this. It's only a minute long, and literally
sure.
it is.
We
It's
can go a
called,
little bit as one. It's okay. Just in the interest of our viewers' time and your time and the like, we probably can go,
oh, we
not
can go
too much
forever.
longer. But I would love to see
Like I said, this is as much therapy as it is enjoyment of. All right, so let me explain why I'm putting this up. And this is from a thing called Diva Japan, and this is well, I'll play it first, and then we'll talk about it. How's that?
Cool.
Okay, so and there's no need for audio, although I could turn it on. It's just music. Okay. I'll just let you just watch it real quickly. It's a minute. That's it.
Okay.
How to visit. It'll actually walk you. Now, this is called hyperlapse.
What is called hyperlapse? I'm not sure what you mean.
What the video is doing right now, accelerating the timeline, where everything's in faster speed.
Oh, I'm just seeing. It looks like just what I'm seeing is a photo and then a photo and then a photo. I'm not seeing anything at any kind of speed.
Oh, okay. Here, let me get back out of this, and then I'll change back out of sharing the screen. There we go. Stop the infinity screen. Stop. Okay. What it basically did was it was a 1 minute video, and this is for I think strongly for international travel first. There's other reasons for this later, but it's a 1 minute. How do you get from my hotel, or how do you get from the train station I'm telling you to go to? Visually bringing you there by accelerating the timeline. That's what's called hyperlapse. Is accelerates the timeline so that you do the entire duration walk, but in 2 seconds. Just so if you want to pause and see stuff, whatever. But it does it in a very hyperlapse kind of way, and then it brings you to, and it's like, hey, look, this is the little dinky door you go to. This is the stairs you go down. This is to tell you if there's a chair available. This is how you order.
Totally.
This is okay. But for me, what I thought was interesting about these contextual pieces is from a hotelier or destination or whatever, is the ability to help your guests with more than just exposing them to, oh, well, take the New York subway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can tell you for a fact, my first experience of getting a ticket on a kiosk in the New York subway was less than freaking pleasant, because I got a bunch of New Yorkers behind me who are like, what's this bozo here? What the, hit the goddamn button.
Oh, I know.
Get the hell out of my way.
Speaking of somebody who does that very regularly, I do understand. And it's funny, the first time you do it with somebody who's not from there, the fact that it is completely alien, nobody knows how to do it. I went to Washington, D.C. not long ago, a couple years ago, which I've been many, many times, and I tried to take the metro.
Yep.
And I travel on the subway all the time. I take trains almost everywhere I go, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out how to buy a ticket to take the metro.
Yep.
Because it was just different enough from what I'm accustomed to that with no helping guidance. So, yeah. No, I think this is a great idea.
Do I get the plastic card? Do I get a paper card? Do I want one all day? Is all day how long of a day?
Well, and it was things like, do you want the $1 thing? Do you want the $5 thing? Do you want the $20 thing or whatever? I'm like,
so one zone, 2 zones?
Right. I'm like, I'm going to this. I know I have to get from this station to this station. I don't know which of those gets me there.
Right.
Like nothing made it clear what those were.
Right. So for me, it's like, look, you can put content onto your site that says, hey, look, to get to us when you arrive at the airport, go to the train station, take this green line. That's all great. But I guarantee you, and I do this regardless, I go out, I have to go to Google Maps. How do I get from there to there? How much walking time? When I get there, okay, green zone, whatever. If you did a little video that showed me walking down to the train station, going up to the ticket, and then and with text, I don't need audio. I mean, most of this stuff is just visual. If anything, I might be doing it on a phone while I'm looking to go over to the kiosk. Where I was like, okay, when I get there, I'm supposed to hit that button. Okay. And doing something that's just very short, not storyline and this and this. just and then accelerate, because the hyperlapsing, which I guess you didn't get to see, where it's I'll send you the link and I'll put the link in for the YouTube as well. What my 360 camera stuff does, it does hyperlapsing, it does slow mo, it does this bullet thing, and all these crazy stuff. Is it gives you, the hotelier, the power to help your guest engage with you in a way that is meaningful, and doing these little snippet things, like if I'm going to go to the festival. I've never been to the festival before, and bring me from the door of the hotel to the festival gate. And then when you get there, show me real closely, like, okay, they're going to go over, and this is the ticket options. This is what you want to buy. If this is what these are the choices. And then, layout is to the left is such and such, to the right is such and such. Give me a feel for it in a very brief period of time. I don't need a big story, so that I feel comfortable making a decision about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think it's so cool right now is that we have that power. This isn't about hiring a camera crew. This isn't hiring, super expensive things. Yeah. Well, and this isn't taking room shots and stuff like this. This is just functional content that is engaging and helpful on a platform that people use.
Lauren, I say this to people all the time. And since we're going to be heading into budget season, here in the fall, what I tell people all the time is whatever your budget is for imagery, double it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what your budget is, double it. And if you're doing no video, make sure you're putting some budget in there. And if you're doing some video, double the budget there. Budget, by the way, could mean, part of somebody's salary to go out and do this with an iPhone. It doesn't mean you have to budget for a camera crew and all that other kind of stuff. It just means that you have to make sure you're allocating time and resources and the like to do some of this, because it's incredibly important. Probably another thing I've said on this show before, I can't tell you the number of website redesigns I've done in my career. I have lost count. It's a gazillion. It's tons, right? Ranging from, refreshes and rebrands to full-on tear the thing down and start over. And in many of them, we have done qualitative studies that ask people, what's your biggest problem with the website? And the biggest problem with the website, before we do the redesign, consistently is, cannot find the content I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Right? And the biggest problem after the website redesign, consistently, is cannot find the content I'm looking for. Because so many different people have so many different questions. It doesn't matter what you do. And this doesn't mean you should stop trying by any stretch.
No.
We're always going to, there are always going to be people looking for more content about the very question that they have to ask. And if for those clients, for those businesses, for those hotels, where you have things that need even the littlest bit of explanation, I think this is a great way to do it. You know what I mean? And you always have something where this could be a valuable ad to answer questions your guests have.
And tying something up,
people call and ask your concierge, your front desk about constantly. The more content you have to answer those questions, nothing else. You're lowering your cost to get in the call. You might also be getting a great customer experience, which is even better.
The reason concierge existed because of the lack of discovery opportunities, and now you can amplify and augment that. And going back to some of our earliest conversations about the age of the traveler and the duration of their travel and the amount of money they spend on their traveling, and if in fact people are traveling less for shorter periods of time and spending less money, then it goes to a question that all hoteliers have to deal with: am I looking for occupancy or ADR? And if you need to increase your frequency of people staying with you because their duration is down and their funding for ability to pay is staying with you down, then you have to increase your occupancy of people that are exposing themselves to what you have to offer and getting them more in your door. Then this is the methodology. And then the other part to this, and I'm so happy that the world is waking up to this, is that mental illness is a physical thing. It's not okay? And anxiety, depression, all are modifiers on people's choices. And travel is an anxious thing, especially into the unknown. As exciting as it is, the other edge of the sword is the anxiety that it creates. And so if you can bring that anxiety down, and I'm not saying, I've talked a lot about being on the soapbox about special needs travelers, but if you can understand that the more you can create comfort for somebody, it doesn't turn into a rate issue with you anymore. It's about the convenience of knowing how to navigate and less uncertainty, staying with you because you have given them content that they feel makes them feel good about knowing where they're going to be, how to get there, and what to do from there, more so than just hoping that they got the other research right and hoping that it really is a 2-block walk. You've actually shown it to them, or you've given them that content. So it's valuable content value to people and their travel decisions.
Absolutely.
So that's totally. My soapbox for today.
No, that's fantastic. I think that's awesome. And yeah, I think that people don't use video near enough. We've definitely talked about this on the show. YouTube is the second most used. Excuse me, the second highest volume of searches of any search engine after Google. Right. So there's a lot of opportunity there as well. So yeah, I could not agree more.
It's one of the most how-to things. It's one of the most how-to things. Why not create your own custom how-to? Get them from your door to whatever it is that you're talking about. And again, going back to time of travel, if you start targeting your content to the time frame that you are representing the people's interest in, if it's ski season, if it's next month, and the content's about the things that are happening next month or in ski season. Like, how do I go to my lift station? Where do I buy a lift ticket? How do I buy a freaking lift ticket? I'm first time skiing, man. I'm going to be doing the bunny trails. How the hell do I get a lift ticket? How do I get on and off a lift thing? Even if you don't create the video yourself, linking it to a video of that lift station to show people how to get on and off one of those bad boys. And if you've never done it, it's a little nerve-wracking when you first do it the first time. Sitting there, waiting to hit it, comes around from behind you. Yeah. So all those things, if you give that information based on the time that they're interested. Obviously, they have no interest in the lift station if they're looking to stay with you over the summer. So don't put it in front of them. Put it in the time frame that they're interested in. It makes sense because it's not about room and rate all the time. It's not about how the paint job in your lobby. It's about what you represent as a bad value proposition to them for you to be considered for.
Exactly right. Couldn't have said it better. Sounds like a great note to end on.
Yeah, I was about to say, there's other articles that Robert sent. Well, of course, they'll all be in the show notes as well and so forth. And like I said, Valen, open invitation if you were watching, if you didn't get the chance to meet with it, come on board, that we would love for you to come in and introduce and talk about the new program that NOR1 has, as much time as you want about it. And but for everyone, Robert, Ed, Stuart, they're having fun. And Holly.
Absolutely. We should do that soon.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, Well, actually, I have been, so I can't really complain because between going to Europe and then taking RV adventure to Key West and then taking a boat ride up the West Coast, I really can't complain much about.
Okay, fine. Well, then apparently I'm the only one not having any fun.
Well, now, are you? HSMI has their Curate program coming up at the beginning of September.
I will be there in September for sure.
Over at Boca Raton, Florida. Be over there for that, and then I'm out of Phoenix doing it. I'm doing a test. I'm doing a live broadcast of a workshop out there, and
very cool.
Should be interesting to see if we get a on-air attendance of the workshop that isn't physically in the city itself. It should be interesting to see how well we get that out there and stuff. And then other events for APAC, their rock program is rolling in. Take a look at their website. The campaigning for it I just started it to roll out for it. And EU is coming around with their sales and marketing, so that their new events coming around for their lunch series. And Washington D.C. I'll be speaking in there, following your footsteps. Actually, Calvin's speaking in September, but you were just out there, so I feel like I'm following your footsteps. I'll be speaking to them in October on convergence training, and cool. So that's a little HSMI stuff. And then Rocket is slated to start in December, first week of December 2nd, in Orlando, Fort Lauderdale, and over here in Fort Myers. It's a Florida-based rocket program. Revenue optimization convergence. So that's all the HSMI news that I have for everything. So, Mr. Tim, for those who want to know everything about the internet and the complexities of life and its inner meetings, where is it they can find you?
Go find a spiritual advisor. Talk to your religious advisor or therapist. However, if you want to know about Tim Peter and Associates and what we do, or anything along those lines, you can find all that at timpeter.com. And you can find me on Twitter at TCPeter. Otherwise, it's either Tim Peter or Tim Peter Associates everywhere else.
And one of these days, we're going to have you as the featured host on your product, your software. I mean, honestly, you've been very modest about your program.
Well, I am here. I'm here to learn and share. I mean, it's always good to It's always good to hear other people's point of view. I hear myself talk all the damn time.
Yeah, but your innovation skills are par none to nobody. So I think
Wow, that's very kind of you to say.
I think you'd be very good for that. Now, for everyone that wants to watch this show and all previous 207 shows, they can go to hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live for the links and show notes to all the previous shows. Also for the HSMA APAC and EU, a rebroadcast of this show will be on Monday at 11 o'clock for Sydney and the 4 o'clock London time. On Tuesday for HSMI EU. Of course, any questions you ask in the chat box will be made over to myself, and if they're directed towards Tim, I'll send them forward to Tim if he has any question. They have any questions specific to him as well. With that in mind, until next week, show number 209. It's the week. The week after that is our 5-year anniversary of doing it every week.
Which is, hold on one second, because I'm going to miss an episode or two in the coming weeks. I'm going to miss next week, I know for sure.
I think it's the week after is our 5-year.
That's our 5-year? Fantastic. I will be here on the 16th.
Yay! I don't know what to do for all the hosts. I mean, I gave a coffee mug at the 2-year. I've been remiss for the past 3-4 years.
Lauren, believe me, for just being here with you every week is gift enough.
Oh, thank you so much. It's actually, like I said, it's turned into therapy. I am more than. Yep. So everyone, thank you. Till show number 209 next week, 11:30 Eastern, 10:30 Central. We'll talk to everyone then.